The author, Katherine Mansfield, was born in Wellington, New Zealand. She eventually moved to London, where she devoted herself to her writing. During much of her career, she was lonely, ill, and jealous. This is shown in her work as she incorporates characters who have similar experiences. She is also known for her bitter depiction of marriages and families. She was influenced by Anton Chekhov, who also focused on human behavior.
The story was written by Katherine Mansfield and it was published in 1920. It follows a woman who enjoys her afternoon at a park in a French town, and she observes the actions of those around her and convinces herself that she and all the other people are actors in the same play.
The story was published right after World War I. At this time, the modernist literary movement was taking place, which is reflected in the story. The plot is not traditional and starts in the middle of Miss Brill's day, rather than the beginning. It doesn't have a happy and resolved ending, unlike other stories before the movement.
Miss Brill is an English teacher who is living in France. She's an observant person who is always aware of her surrounding environment. The reader can assume that Miss Brill is lonely since she focuses so deeply on the relationships of those around her. Also, Miss Brill can be seen as a sensitive person when her feelings get deeply hurt after being made fun of by the young couple.
The theme of the story is, as people grow older, they start to feel more distant from those around them. Their age becomes too high to do the activities they once participated in, and so to feel more connected and involved with those around them, they create this reality where they escape their disconnection.
On a faint, chilly autumn day, Miss Brill decided to pull out her fur and wear it to her weekly Sunday outing. She dusted off her fur and gave life back into its eyes. It was nice to feel it again. She had taken it out of its box that afternoon, shaken out the moth powder, and given it a good brush. She loved how sweet it was that the fur's sad little eyes would snap at her again. She was walking towards the park and saw more people that afternoon than the previous Sunday, and the band sounded louder and gayer. Only 2 people shared her special seat. They did not speak. The couple was disappointing for Miss Brill as she looked forward to their conversation. Miss Brill glanced sideways at the old couple. Perhaps they would go soon. Last Sunday, a couple argued about how the wife should wear spectacles. This bored Miss Brill greatly. Behind the rotunda, the slender trees with yellow leaves were drooping. Miss Brill admired the scenery. Next, 2 peasant women with funny straw hats passed, gravely. After, a beautiful woman came along and dropped her bunch of violets, and a little boy ran after to hand them to her, and she took them and threw them away as if they had been poisoned. Watching everything happen around her, Miss Brill did not know whether to admire the events or not. And now an ermine toque and a gentleman in gray met in front of her. She was so pleased to see him. He was not. He blew a great deep puff of smoke into her face. She was so disappointed. She saw a familiar face and walked off. Next, the little brown dog trotted on solemn and then slowly trotted off, like it had been drugged. Oh, how fascinating it was. It was like a play that she was a part of. She was on stage. An actress, she thought. A young couple deeply in love sat next to Miss Brill on the bench. They made fun of her and compared her fur to a fried whiting. Miss Brill overheard this conversation and felt deeply embarrassed. She hurried off, neglecting her weekly stop for an almond cake. She went back to her house, took off her fur, and placed it back into its box. When she was finally alone, she thought she heard something crying.
The point of view of the story is third-person limited, meaning we are only given the main character's thoughts and actions. This is appropriate to the story as it allows the reader to easily focus on Miss Brill and follow how the environment, along with the actions and conversations of the people around her, make her feel. The point of view also lets the reader interpret details about Miss Brill, which in this case suggests that Miss Brill enjoys observing and listening to other people. The story includes a specific setting that takes place on a Sunday afternoon at a park in France. We can also infer that it's autumn since there is a faint chill and yellow leaves falling from the sky. The park also has a green rotunda where a crowd is gathered to watch a band play. Miss Brill sits on a bench and watches the activity of people surrounding her. Miss Brill also observes a young, well-off French couple in love sitting next to her who are annoyed with her presence, causing them to make fun of her and her clothing. Her observations of the group included in the setting highlight the idea that Miss Brill attempts to connect herself to them by referring to them and herself as performers in a play. This contributes to the overall idea that alienation makes a person feel deprived of and desperate for interaction.
Miss Brill is the protagonist of the story since she is presented as a harmless character who only wants to create a happy reality where everything and everyone is positive. She can be considered a dynamic character because of the epiphany she has after realizing people view her differently than she thought. Once her perfect illusion was disrupted, she realized that everything she believed was fake, and the reality that she had dreamed of was different than her actual life. The author's characterization supports the central idea of the story that Miss Brill is portrayed as a lonely old lady who tries to get involved in everyone else's life. Two other important characters in the story are the young couple at the end, as they are the antagonists since they insult Miss Brill and her fur. They are considered static characters because they continue to insult her until she leaves. The author uses these characters to carry out Miss Brill's epiphany by making her realize that she is living an illusion and everything she is dreaming about is a lie. One language device used in the story is symbolism, since Miss Brill's fur is meant to represent her loneliness and unique personality. Her fur supports the central idea that as humans get older, they tend to become more distant from those around them. This can lead them to create false illusions in their mind as a way to cope with their actual reality. Another language device that supports the central idea of the story is a simile. Towards the end of the story, the young girl in the couple says it's Miss Brill's fur that looks exactly like a fried whiting. By comparing the fur to a fried forgotten fish, the young girl was able to also connect it to Miss Brill. This supports the central idea that no matter how hard Miss Brill tries to make everyone connected, she will always be portrayed as an old lady who is disconnected from reality.
The tone of the story is bright and ironic, which is highlighted by the point of view and main character. The point of view allows the reader to understand the thoughts of Mrs. Brill, which portray an ironic tone because she thinks the people around her are quiet and boring, but someone may think the same about her because she's sitting by herself on a bench. In the beginning of the story, Mrs. Brill enjoys the weather at the park and is happy with her fur, which is showed through a more positive tone. This shows that Mrs. Brill attempts to have a positive outlook on her life despite being lonely. The end of the story takes a sadder tone as Mrs. Brill is affected by the comments made by the young couple and no longer has a positive outlook.